I'm Philip Mann, the Technical Director at Kappler, and today I want to talk more about response to the opioid drugs fentanyl and carfentanil. We had spoken about this earlier, and we talked about how there was a lack of guidance available to first responders, and that in many situations these responders were donning level A protection for entry into areas that the fentanyl or carfentanil was suspected to be. However, there has been more recent guidance published, one by the IAB, the Interagency Board, and then some other guidance that has been published by the American Association of Pharmaceutical Toxicology. And I want to look at those reports today and share some of the information that they provide. In the IAB report, first off, they mention specifically about the need for performance of a hazard assessment prior to the selection of protective equipment or entry into a suspected facility. And in this guidance, they categorize the level of risk associated with the exposure. So they talk about low risk situations, they talk about moderate risk situations where there is either a low potential volume of the suspected opioid or a moderate level of risk where there's a high level of suspected opioid, and then high risk for particulates, and then high risk for chemical exposures as well. So they recommend that you perform these assessments prior to selection of the PPE. And then they go on to create a table that identifies these risk areas and compares these risk areas to the type of responder that would be involved in that scenario. For example, emergency medical services performing patient care, or law enforcement officials on patrol. And then they go off on as well into special operations by those emergency responders. And then it ties that category over to a particular type of PPE. And in this case, they have an additional table that specifies the type of PPE that would be worn for skin protection in those scenarios. And they do specify NFPA certified product in some situations. They make reference to NFPA 1999 as well as NFPA 1994 Class 4 for the types of products that could be considered acceptable for those responses. Now, the other information that was recently published was again from the American College of Medical Toxicology. And basically what information they're providing is more along the toxicological aspects of these compounds and the results of interaction with these compounds. And in all honesty, contradictory to prior information that was provided, they do not suspect incidental contact of the opioid compound with the skin to be a problem, that it has to be in the bloodstream or in the brain to create those harmful effects. Now, with this guidance available, it still does not mean that these first responders are not going to be in level A's and higher levels of protection. And of course, the IAB does recommend this for those high risk areas. So again, more recent guidance, a little bit more prescriptive guidance for these first responders. Still an area of great unknown for us, and we're still trying to identify the best types of PPE and the best responses for these applications. I'm Philip Mann, the Technical Director at Kappler, and today we've talked more about response to fentanyl and carfentanil.